welcome back. This is the Poet is a Human with the philosopher Dunamis. On this week's episode number 22, y'all. Fight for hip hop. Please be sure to hit that like button on your way in, and if you like us, consider subscribing. Keep up with our episodes on YouTube and give us a follow on X.
Fightcast is here to empower individuals to live healthier, master finances, pursue their dreams, and inspire others through self-awareness and global impact. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only, and not financial advice.
Dunamis was popping.
Oh man, not a lot. This has been a great week. I've been looking forward to this week. This is exciting, man. How are you doing?
Doing just fantastic, man. Fantastic. It's been a good week. It's been a very cool week. It's been some little bit of scattered thunderstorms, and I was able to just stare out the window. Staring out the window is nice.
That's awesome, dude. Is this we've been getting a little bit of rain here too at night, but just across the middle of the night. Are you guys getting some rain during the day too?
Yeah, we were getting some in the middle of the night there as well. We got some a little bit throughout the day today, but it wasn't anything major. It's definitely just the water on the windows for sure, but it didn't rain for too long. It was maybe 3 minutes, if that, and just went away. So, and it really wasn't too muggy outside either, and it ended up being a really good day and so nice. Still got the windows open and just a nice cool breeze blowing in.
Got the Mayflowers to look forward to, you know?
Oh yeah,
All this.
indeed. Get out of my head.
Oh
uh,
man.
we're fighting for hip hop. We're fighting for hip hop this episode, and we were talking about music here, and we had featured Corey Drums on that episode, and Corey Drums got to tell us about him coming up in the era of hip hop, as we're going to be speaking about here. Gave us his rundown of what life was like, and I would say that this is a segue off of that, and specifically talking about hip hop now. And I'm really excited for this one, man, because just being a hip hop artist, I really wasn't as in touch with hip hop in its earlier stages of time. That wasn't something that I was fully educated with until I got more educated into this and wanted to start honing my craft more and understanding lyricism and just understanding hip hop culture. So a lot of this stuff was new to me. But what about you, man? What were you listening to, man?
I just got to say that a lot of this has been very new to me as well, and even just as we were researching, and understanding the early days of hip hop and how much I just really wasn't aware of at all. Growing up in the 80s, I listened to a lot of your typical 80s music, but I really became aware of hip hop in the 1990s, with artists like Snoop Doggy Dogg and Dr. Dre and the Notorious B.I.G. and Jay-Z and Tupac and all of that. So anything that really happened before that is outside of my scope of knowledge. But I will say that I even in the 90s, I listened to a lot of rock music, and so there was always that crossover, though. Even Aerosmith had that crossover song "Walk This Way," and so I always enjoyed the hip hop that I heard when I heard it, but it was mostly the stuff that was on the radio.
Yeah, same, man. I didn't really have much exposure to it, and not that I wasn't allowed to listen to it. That just wasn't what was on the radio. And I got into Biggie, Tupac early. Tupac really, really especially. I listened to a lot of Tupac on the radio. And Changes was a song that I remember a lot growing up as a kid. It was Changes and Keep Your Head Up, Dear Mama. Those were and those were the main three that really hit home to me. And doing a little bit more digging as I furthered my career and into music, artistry, and specifically with hip hop. l- going with Corey drums, this a lot of this started back in the 1970s, and I mean, this was before we even start talking about LL Cool J's. I mean, this was we're talking about house parties. We're talking about DJ Cool Herc, who what they would say is one of the OG founding fathers of hip hop. And what was unique about him during that time was he would take, these records and, these old school records and, these, put them on the turntables and create a rhythm that was, that would enable you to be able to dance. And that was what it was all about then. It was all about being able to dance and being able to express yourself physically. Breakdancing was very prevalent during those times. You had a lot of that happening, the cardboard boxes for sure, and even the fashion too, which we might have to have a whole other segment when it comes to that, because that was something else too that I learned of just how evolutionary fashion was over in the East Coast. Man, shout out to the East Coast. And yeah, so with that, your break dancing and then the hip hop too. This was another thing that I learned was hip hop, and not to dilute it in this way, but the hip hop, the rapping portion of it about wasn't about the esotericism so much. It was about going with the beat. It was being able to rhyme. It was being able to flow. It was being able to have those words that got the crowd jumping, got them excited, and so those guys became the front man along with that. And as hip hop evolved, we start to see more breakdowns and just more storytelling. And yeah, dude, it just feel like over time it gets really really exciting. And there were some periods where it was like, oh man, what's happening? What's up? What's going on? But I think that's with any of these genres too, man. But yeah, yeah. But that's what that's where my research led me in all of that. So yeah, it's cool, man. Because I used to break dance, not like super good at it, but I don't know, it was just like I don't know, something to do.
Oh man, I think there's actually a VHS tape floating out there somewhere of of a young Dunamis trying to break dance. So yeah, we just we won't acknowledge
Oh,
necessarily any of that in, in public. But
we're
yeah,
gonna have to talk on that. We're gonna have to talk about that.
oh yeah, oh, yeah. But yeah, man, I always liked the Beastie Boys in the '90s. That was kind of an interesting thing for me, and they told stories in a lot of their music, and I've heard a lot of people say that they're sort of got an original hip hop sound to what they do because a lot of what they tell is stories in their songs. But I definitely always listened to the Beastie Boys, and later on it was Linkin Park, that got me more into the hip hop side of things, and I definitely developed an appreciation for the art and the skill of rapping, the rhythm and poetry. You know what I'm saying? That makes hip hop special. I didn't realize how much of it was driven by the music early on though, until we looked
Mhm.
into that, and that just kind of blows my mind. I've always thought the scratching and the two turntable thing was an interesting thing that I wanted to learn more about. I do understand what they're doing with the headphones and how they're turning volumes up and down, but it just it's mind blowing, when you look at somebody exhibiting that skill, and it's hard to fathom, how it can be done. So
Yeah, it's super cool. I remember trying to do it once and I was definitely not doing it right. There was no technique to it at all. I just thought that all you had to do was put the turntable on or the record on the turntable and just move it. And yeah, I messed up. I messed up a record player doing that, to say the least. Yeah, look, uh, yeah, not one of my proudest moments. Um, but yeah. Anyways, I'm with you on that, dude. I definitely got into Linkin Park a lot, and I was big into Mike Shinoda and big into his lyricism and big into that storytelling. That was really one of the main reasons why I started writing music was because of Linkin Park. And that's no disrespect to hip hop at all. I know this is a segment about that, but I also want y'all to also know too that Mike Shinoda is very much a rapper, and I put him in this category of hip hop artists of influence because he is that person to me, and I mean mutually us, from what it sounds like, and yeah, he was something else. But yeah, dude, I mean, I know people say LL Cool J and whatnot, and I'm not just saying this because he featured on our podcast, but even Corey Drums too. I mean, Corey Drums is a pioneer in what he's got going on right now, and what he did. He's definitely put his footprint where he's at, and he's respected. So, just a shout out to all of our forefathers, before us to give us this opportunity to be able to even have these platforms and just even give us something to talk about. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I was gonna say the Sugar Hill Gang too, man. When you were talking about the Beastie Boys, I was thinking about the Sugar Hill Gang. Sugar Hill Gang. What you see is not the test, and just that part, like it was simple, but it was still impactful. Just something like that, and even stuff like that too. And that's what I really respected about early hip hop. You could just say whatever. You could just say whatever. The more honest you are when you're telling the truth, your words are more impactful. That's how I look
Always.
at it. And I felt like with Sugar Hill Gang, it was simple, but at the same time, it was just like, hey man, listen, honestly, we're just here to have a good time. And they got that vibe. And that's why I feel like the evolution of independent artistry is so big, not just right now, but and it's going to be for a very, very long time. So there are a lot of independent artists that are breaking through that barrier, that are cutting out those nuances of the saturation of what's going on the radio, on what's your YouTube and what's popular, and they're popularizing themselves. And that's, I mean, shoot, that's what you want. So I'm really excited to be an independent artist and excited to see other independent artists that are getting to that crossroad and are making the same, making the same transitions.
Heck yeah, man. Would you say that the independent hip hop movement is similar? I see parallels with the grunge movement. You have Nirvana and Kurt Cobain
Mm,
as a response to the corporate packaged heavy metal and rock music of the day. It was very corporate. It was, you know, there were a lot of things that Kurt Cobain had to say about the music of the day, and why he they were basically a punk band, you know. They came in and it was extremely disruptive, and a lot of people consider that to be a renaissance of rock and roll music during that period of time.
mhm.
And to bring it back around to the question that we asked Corey Drums there in episode 3, and if you're not following Corey Drums, y'all need to be following Corey Drums on X. You need to check them out on YouTube and what they're doing with their music. So the question that we asked was whether hip hop was in a renaissance, and I think we got an answer in the affirmative from Corey, and I
Mm.
I tend to agree. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that it is. I think that it is in a Renaissance era. And to answer your other question, yeah, I definitely feel like, in the words of Cobain, we're all just entertainers. We're stupid and contagious, and I mean, he really exposed a lot of light to a lot of this stuff. And I felt like a lot of artists did in their own way. He was just very, very transparent about it. And I feel like, yeah, this is definitely a breakthrough, and you're getting some. Zach De La Rocha is a bit zealous, is a bit overzealous to say, but I feel like there is that mindset in some ways on just finding more innovative ways to break through and just integrating other avenues. The Renaissance era, yes, and I say that confidently and maybe more biased, just because I listen to the content that our label makes, and I hear so much beyond potential in what they're doing. And then I listen, and all credit to all artists of making music, because it's not an easy thing to do. Whether you're, it doesn't matter your process. at all. So I definitely don't want to demean anybody when, when I say that. I just, I think about the type of support that independent artists may or may not have in comparison to having a backing of a record label. And those are quite literally those disadvantages. But to be able to look at those things and capitalize off of them versus looking at it as a handicap, I'm seeing more of a rally come together with this, utilizing other platforms to build these core base audiences. So from that standpoint, from an innovative standpoint, I definitely see a lot of renaissance. And as far as content goes too, I'm seeing a lot more collaboration and cohesion. I'm seeing less of this competitive nature in wanting to just completely demoralize somebody on music versus us helping each other and building and creating those positive connotations in our music. So I love that about our community, and I love that especially about our record label, where we're all in to be successful together. We're all also able to be our own entity and be our
Mhm.
own reckoning forces, that it's not a comparative nature. It's just the art of the sport for one, and it's the consistency of that. There's respect in the consistency when it comes to this. We know that it's 10,000 hours, they say,
Mhm.
to really get molded into this and really get right with this, get your ducks in a row. And we recognize that hustle. And I feel there's a much wider mutual respect with independent artists in this community.
And I'm sure you can have some amount of friendly competition
Oh
that
yeah.
carries it forward, but without, you know, yeah, it's different than it was, I guess, back in the days when people were getting shot necessarily, although that still happens today, I guess, right? Too.
Yeah, it's not gotten better, and I think now for it, what is happening now is the music portion of it. I was having a conversation with somebody about music dictating life and life dictating music, and I was just talking about the duality of what those two things mean when you think about life. You were looking at a lot of brutality then, looking, just there was I don't want to say it was brutality is brutality, but when you think about the causalities of it, it really stems from just miscommunication. So I suppose that's the common denominator, and even now when you listen to the music, it's just the miscommunication of what's going on. But and then we talk about what's being glorified. I don't. I'm not fully subscribed to people just making music to evoke a feeling of other people wanting to hurt people. Look at it from a psychological standpoint because that's I have a psychology background, and I feel that there are a lot of cries that come out with this music too. And sometimes these outlets aren't some outlets aren't readily available for others, and here you are. Or when you think about your influences in your community, go back and listen to that podcast episode, y'all. I think we've
Mhm.
talked about community a couple times now.
Yeah,
So I'm
community
just,
and purpose, sort of,
yeah,
are those two episodes.
y'all need to go back and listen, y'all, for real, for real. I love how it all ties in together. But when you look at your community and you look at who are your leaders, and you hear a lot of hip hop artists or what's starting out that didn't have the best upbringings, and it was quite literally you either be a hooper or you make it in music. That was really the narrative then, because that it just seemed that those were the only two things that people in these communities were really doing to see some type of 180 in their life. We know that there are other opportunities out there, but how do you say that to somebody who hasn't seen those opportunities?
I agree completely. Yeah. It's a difficult scenario. The world and the country, and I would be foolish if I pretended to say that I knew what the answer was. It makes sense that coming out of the 80s and 90s that would be hip hop would definitely be one of the outlets, one of the better outlets, in terms of a possible direction in order to be able to make make a change in your life, or to hit that a potential way where you can hit that wealth and make that life changing, really generational wealth for your family. And that's it's a difficult thing to do, and that's why I think a lot of people they take big risks. You always talk about the people that gamble in the stock market and throw all their money into GameStop or whatever it is to see it either go up or go down. And we've talked a lot about the survival mentality. And if there isn't an easy path for someone to see where they can make incremental steps to improve their life over time, which is sort of the goal, I think, is to grow and to save and to do better, it presses a lot of people into, I think, more of a I have to hit that moonshot. You know what I'm saying? I've got to make it to the NBA, or I have to make, get a big record label deal. And if anything, independent the success of independent artists breaks that down even more, and should hopefully make that more accessible, where more people can have access to, you don't necessarily have to have millions of followers. You don't necessarily have to have the type of audience that can fill the Alamo Dome,
Right.
to be able to make it.
You see the steps too. That's the other thing of it. I see as an independent artist, you see more of the steps that are in between some of the bigger ones. And those are the things that I guess they don't want you to know, type of deal. And I was talking with DJ Deflor. Shout out to DJ Deflor. And if you haven't, subscribed to his YouTube page and make sure that you follow him on Spotify and all listening platforms. But we were even talking about hashtags, and this is some gems, y'all. So I really want y'all to go ahead and take notes on this, because hashtags, are they important? Yes, they are. But looking at it from this angle, as an artist, an independent artist, when you want to start building a following, rather than doing the traditional FYP for your page, or doing the traditional country artist, rock artist, where you see the number on there where it says 6.9 million people look at this channel, and so on and so forth. You see those numbers and you associate that with more exposure. But what you're not realizing is that pool is more saturated. So that's 6.9 people that are in there that you have to compete for an algorithm with. So what we've discovered in the hashtags themselves, and if you have not utilized ChatGPT, artists, this is another one to utilize as well, and start to give yourself an artist overview of yourself and ask yourself these questions. One of the things that I asked myself in ChatGPT: what would be some effective hashtags that Is a Human could use to build more of a core audience reach? And it gave me a list of hashtags, and I went to use these hashtags, and some of these hashtags only had 697 views, only had so many followers. Those are actually the ones that you want to tap into, because the less people there are on these hashtags, the higher probability you have for more views. And I've tested that theory a couple different times, and just in addition to consistently posting content on top of doing this, trying this new method, I've seen positive results, man. I don't get Death Lord results yet, y'all. But from where I was before versus where I'm at now, I guess, for lack of better words, it's exponential to me, because it's growth. This is the fun part about it. This is the continuance of, once you've established your identity as an artist, now you're looking to build your brand with your name, right? Your music is already your product, and as you expand your brand, then I feel naturally, when you're making your music, your content changes too, because obviously you're experiencing different things, so on and so forth. But yeah, these are just some of the things that, again, um, I would say some of the tricks of the trade.
With the way independent artists come up now, and back in the day, you might have CDs that you'd be selling out of the back of your car, or at a live show or whatever that is. And I know from having recorded some music myself, and having had messed around with that a little bit, it's always cool to connect with the fans, like with the the artwork or the lyrics and the booklet, and all those
Yeah.
different kind of things that you can put into that thing that you're creating and passing on to your fans. We're kind of in a different day and age now, so we're talking about like the algorithms and YouTube and Facebook and TikTok and all of the different things that we do now. But
Right.
what do you think in terms of blockchain or crypto, Web3, NFTs? I know that was something that there had been a lot of music on blockchain, and there has been on Cardano. This is a Cardano project that we're a part of, and so are there potentially opportunities to connect with fans in new and interesting ways that maybe have started to be explored, and what can we expect in the future from hip hop that maybe is going to be a part of this renaissance going forward?
Great question. I would say as a fan, seeing that everything is readily, you can just get on a streaming platform and listen to all of this music. What I would love as a fan, I would love to see some exclusivity, some more exclusivity. And I feel that the crypto community can capitalize on those things because it wouldn't be any different than you would do the same things, as an artist for your fans, give them content, but now you're setting it up in different ways. You could do these mini projects, you could do many short stories, short films, and you can mint those, or you could do NFTs, and you could do some rarity type things like 1 out of 6, and do it however you want and whatever it may be. But that's where I feel like crypto can be very unique in that space, because think about it, like we the vinyl records, dude, like, man, like, how dope is a vinyl record, bro?
Yeah.
Like, just those one of one vinyl records. And I think even with that too, because you can adopt, now this is the artist, like, you can adopt Web 2, certain structures, and apply that into the crypto.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're missing that, and I think that we need to be able to be more innovative. We need to be innovative in that sense, because the stuff that the I don't think the audience ever stopped wanting it. I think they just wanted it to be more personable, like you said. Like, I mean, dude, early 2000s and all of that, like, dude, in Lincoln Park, and getting those books, man, like getting those CDs that had the lyrics in there, and you go through page by page and you would learn every single word, dude. That's what I loved about those earlier times when we were going to FYE, and we were going to was Blockbuster selling CDs? I don't know, were they?
They probably had a few for sale.
Okay.
Best Buy was the place to go for CDs.
Best Buy, yeah, Best Buy. See, we had FYE back where I was from, and that was like
Okay.
our Best Buy. But Best Buy is like by far just blew us out of the water. It was our local thing.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, but I love that about those times, dude. And I mean, heck, even the music, dude. I feel like even and I know I kind of got a little side there, but it made me think. I mean, we're talking about hip hop. It made me think of during the early 2000s for hip hop was pretty dope, man, because it was like I felt like that was a hit era. That was a hit era.
Oh yeah.
You're thinking about
Like
50
Usher.
Cent. Yeah, Usher, 50 Cent in the club. You're talking about Eminem. You're talking about Dr. Dre. I mean, you're talking about Nelly too, man. I mean, you're talking about Bow Wow. You're talking about when the R&B and hip hop were all together, and they were doing those collaborations. And dude, it was just, and then the R&B female artists that were coming in doing those things. That was a big time. Destiny's Child with Lil Wayne, Soldier, that was huge. Lil Wayne, gosh, I mean, him and the Hot Boys, Juvenile. 2000s was popping. Long tees, bro. But you guys were already wearing boxy suits in the 90s anyway, so it's not like we were doing anything different. Oh man.
It
Um,
definitely was we, on this podcast, in addition to hip hop, of course, we talk about all kinds of things. We talk about financial things. We talk about the macro, and I will just say, zooming out, that the early 2000s, in many ways, was the peak of it all. Like that was it was technically after the dot-com bust, but it was before the financial crisis, and
Yeah.
it was just sort of the height of what I guess the American dream was, all of the good and the bad and the you know, the
The ugly.
excesses, the ugly, all of it, all of it. It was the height of it though, and everything since then has been a little bit of a diminishment. You know, hopefully that changes. I There's always the question, right? Like, does this country regain some of that back, the early 2000s kind of energy back, right?
Mm,
um Hopefully without some of the crazy excesses, right?
yeah. Yeah.
You gotta tone it down a little bit, but yeah,
I think
it'd be great to have that again.
I think now that just looking at looking at the new administration and a lot of the censorship laws that were implemented as well, I think that now that those have been lifted, you're going to see a lot more artists that are going to be hopefully more authentic in some of the art that maybe they weren't able to put out, and instead of thinking about the hit, they're going to just be them and have this be a climb in in their own space. And you're doing your audience a favor when when you're doing that, because now you're able to build a bond with those people. Those thousand core people are going to be the ones that buy your CD, the ones that buy your NFT, the ones that buy your vinyl, the ones that are going to show up to your concerts and do the VIP lounge with you. Those are going to be those people. And we gotta stay grounded in that sense of none of us would be in this position really if we didn't have the type of support that we had, fans and people that were invested in us, on top of us being invested in ourselves. So it's a causality thing. When you believe in yourself, other people will believe in you, for sure. And I see that resilience a lot in hip hop, and that's what I love the most about hip hop. I've always loved the rawness of it, I'm going to go back and say it, but Tupac was and arguably one of the greatest hip hop artists of all time. And aside from hip hop, he was just one of the best artists of all time. You can argue with me, fight me in the comments. We can talk about Michael Jackson, Prince, and everybody under the sun. But when I'm thinking about somebody who told these incredible stories and was so raw about it, but they could go around and do something like California Love, the following week, but then do changes, and then he was one of those people that unfortunately just went too soon, and had such an impactful message that you do see that carry into Kendrick Lamar's Absol, Schoolboy Q's. And I'm talking about a lot of West Coast artists right now, and you can find me in the comments, but West Coast artists right now are definitely running the map in this current time, for sure. I'm just going to be honest with you, and that's no disrespect to my East Coast folks out there. Right now, I'm not saying Joey Badass didn't go out and do his thing, but when you put him and Ray Vaughn together, Ray Vaughn's gonna get him every single time. I'm just saying, Ray Vaughn's been killing those singles, y'all. Fight me in the comments. My hip hop folks, what I'm talking about. There's so many talented hip hop artists out there, for sure, man, that are just in a saturated market right now. And it's putting out one thing, and whatever that one thing you want to say it is, it's just one thing. That's how I look at it. They're just putting out one thing. And gosh, man, you've got so many underground, undiscovered, hip hop artists out there that have so much to say, and are doing a lot in their communities, and it's not getting the act, or it's not getting the attention that it deserves. And yeah, we I feel like we have an obligation to have these thoughts and be able to put them into action. I feel like we've got a lot of smart people in this community that we can make these things happen, for sure. And again, man, I'm just really a part of I'm happy to be a part of the innovation. I'm really happy to be a part of it. I'm happy to have the group of guys that I'm working with and the team that I have of just guys that just day in and day out, they're just constantly honing their craft, dude. And Shout out to Cavelli White. He's one of those guys. I mean, he's a top tier artist, hand and foot. This guy, he knows his way around a microphone. That's for darn sure. RC's got a way with his words where he says a lot of impactful things, and he does it in an animated way that it's a style of his own in a very unique way, a very good way. That like some of the things that man says, y'all can't get away with that. Y'all can't get away with that, and that's what impresses me, man. And it just, and then hearing all of us come together when we do these projects, I'm just thinking like, man, what would it have been like if it were in the '90s for us, or or even, because I know a lot of us, artists and hip hop artists specifically, we, when you listen to what was being played at that time, like, I'm thinking about Ti, I'm thinking about Young Jeezy, I'm thinking about DJ Khaled, Rick Ross, thinking about Fat Joe, lean backs. Like, again, we're talking like hits, we're talking about hit makers, and you're looking at that as, I mean, in reality, it's like, man, that's what I'm up against in that space, and we're all in that mindset of, well, we don't have the 24 channel mixer, we don't have the Newman U87 microphone, we got caught in this mindset of just not having things, and how many times have we said those things about ourselves, and it has put us in a stuck situation where you just get, I call it like artist paralysis. Where you end up not doing anything at all because you feel like no matter what you do, you're just not going to be good enough because you're not going to have that kind of backing. And that's, man, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. And that turns into like this whole self-sabotage thing too. And then
You don't, and not only do you not need all that stuff to get started, I
at all.
mean, like, you could probably get started with a $30 headset microphone and, and a computer and a set of software and be done with it. But the difficult thing I think now is that computer. Like, that computer itself is going to be the big cost. And I can say back in the day for myself that I had a little 4-track cassette recorder,
Okay. Yep.
and so, I don't know if those still exist, but I tell you, that was handy back in the day to be able to just put down it. We need to make it easy again for the amateur hobbyist music artists to play with their craft, to learn what it is that they're doing. And the cool thing about it now that I'm kind of paying attention again, I've spent many years not paying attention. It seems like the amount of software tools that are out there and are inexpensive really make it pretty accessible to get started getting involved. And if you were wanting to make beats or wanting to do that DJ kind of stuff, which I'm interested in, that's something that I would be, interested in playing around with. It's interesting in how accessible it is today, but it definitely seems, when you talk about the oversaturation, the what it takes to achieve something can feel insurmountable, maybe even more so now than it did when I was younger. But that's probably even more of a reason to find what it is you love in life, and if hip hop is it, to dig in and grind, because like, so many people, as much as it's saturated with people that are out there doing it, the thing is there are so many people that aren't, and there are so many people that are half-assing it, that if you're serious about what it is you want to do, just like anything in life, if you're serious about it and you work hard at it, you're going to be able to achieve and surpass at least the half the people that are not trying.
Right. Yeah. And to piggyback off of that, I want to say, when you're working and you're in that collaborative space, and what I mean by collaborative space, I mean just being in that community, like specifically hip hop. Yeah, I was watching an interview with Two Chainz, Alchemist, and Larry June, and they were talking about the state of hip hop, and they were talking about just underground artists on their way up, and how those tenured artists have an obligation to help those artists and not gatekeep. And that's something too in hip hop that's been prevalent is the gatekeeping, because along with the the plush context of being at the top and being the GOAT, where you could only have a Michael Jordan or a Kobe or a LeBron. It couldn't be LeBron, Kobe. They couldn't all be together on the same mountain. And that's always been that type of demeanor that comes with it. And talking a little bit earlier about that friendly competition, and again, there's nothing wrong with that, but I also feel like too, another reason why maybe hip hop has this narrative behind it is, and I'm not going to blame all of this on the label either. I'm not going to sit here and say the label is evil. Although I don't feel like the label helps as far as what they push out and what they want to popularize. Because again, you've got kids that are, they're not heavy hip hop heads, or maybe the average listener is not a heavy hip hop head. And then you've got somebody who loves hip hop and then somebody who wants to make hip hop music too. And then they hear this music and they're like, well, this is what sells. And then they end up again becoming something that they're not. But just in that, in this hip hop space, making it okay to be comfortable with who you are. We've got childish Gambinos out here that are doing all sorts of different things. And I know he's not a favorite right now, but Drake is another one of those artists who went outside of the hip hop realm, who is he writes very well, and he may not have written all of his music, but regardless, you can't deny the man's talent, who's not only been able to do hip hop, but has also been able to do pop, who's also been able to do international style songs too, and just making that okay. And also still being able to look at that artist and say, that person has hip hop roots. And the thing that I've noticed is when hip hop artists go outside, like Nelly did with Tim McGraw, All in My Head, and that was that country hip hop mashup. It was like, oh yeah, no, it was really really good. But oh, Nelly sold out. Nelly sold out because he did a country song. Or it's like, bro, what Tech Nine is doing is going to Rock on the Range, or whatever it is now, the Temple. He's doing shows at these heavy rock concerts. That's okay. That is absolutely okay. And that's what I mean by not gatekeeping. Because at the end of the day, music, hip hop music, rock music, country music, it's all sound. And you two said it. It's just drum and sound at the end of the day.
He also
So
said it's one love.
it's one love. Shout out to Bono. uh, but if there's one thing that I could, and I feel like it's starting to happen. I do feel like it is shifting. I do see a lot of our artists, Wiz Khalifa, again, Two Chains, Alchemist. Alchemist is a producer. Larry June, hip hop artist. I'm seeing Jay-Z, and I'm seeing a lot of these hip hop artists that are now entrepreneurs that are giving away those gems and that sauce. And not only that, they're not pushing us to go to the label, because a lot of these artists started out, or they started out in this area, then they got the deal, and then they were like, well, now I want to do my own stuff, and now they're pushing that. So I just want to continue to I just want to continue to see that narrative get pushed, and I just want to see more hip hop artists just talk more about the things that the things that motivate them, inspire them, and just not all this extra stuff. I have to have this conversation with my cousin, my little cousin. He is an aspiring hip hop artist, and he's influenced a lot by his community and the things that go on around that community. And he doesn't live that life at all. He literally doesn't. I make the joke. I'm like, dude, I know your parents. It's just like you have a pretty nice life, my guy. So the things that you're talking about right now just don't make sense to me. It's like, I can tell you you've got a great flow all day, but it's really hard to digest your lyrics. It's that's and I'm working through that. But again, you can take a horse to the water, you can't make him drink it. But it's just thinking like, man, he's 15 years old and he's talking about what?
Yeah.
And then it just then again, it also just makes me think about I mean, the music that's out there now, and it's easy. It's not just him being influenced by his community and the people that are in the studio with him. It's what they're influenced by. It's what their parents are influenced by, and it's so much deeper than that. It becomes a spider web, and I don't like that connotation of hip hop. I don't. But and y'all can, and before anybody says anything, I also don't genuinely feel like that was where hip hop was wanted to go in the first place. When we were talking about brutality earlier, and I'm thinking about NWA, and I'm thinking about the police brutality, and I'm thinking about even Public Enemy and Fighting the Power, and you think about all of that. It was a different type of movement then. There was a clear division, separation of, and there was a clear narrative of this hip hop music is inciting violence and it needs to be stopped. But in reality, it was just telling you the harsh truths that weren't always being televised, other than hip hop was just bad. It was just bad, and the music was making people violent. No, it was the music that was telling you what was happening in those communities, and they were creating an awareness with that. So, and I feel like that whole situation got twisted up, and even with gangs, and we could talk about that later too.
Yeah.
And when you think
Well,
about,
while we're on this too, and just to juxtapose that with, despite that being really maybe the root of the message, there then is what the labels have done to even take maybe that violence further than it ever needed to go, and and
Mhm.
and perpetuate more of a culture in that direction, which is a wrong thing. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I also,
Not
when
at all.
you, with what you were talking about with all of this and the innovations and the renaissance, it just also, I have to be reminded again of with the stuff that Corey Drums has done in NFT spaces with his he has had book releases along with musical releases, and all sorts of different formats and ideas that have come from what they're doing, and Solidity as well, and the Finest are putting out music on a regular basis and continuing to work in this space. I think that what we have going in the future now is is exciting, and I think what you're talking about are the negatives. The negatives are there, and I don't think that I don't think that, like you were saying earlier, I don't think that it's up to us to talk down on any particular artist or any particular message or anything like that, but just to say that, like, being being your authentic self, me being my authentic self, and each of us being our authentic self is probably the best way to perpetuate hip hop in this world, is not to not to grab on to any message just because it's stylish or popular or whatever it is, or you think it's going to make money. But what we tend to talk about, at least with our stuff, I could say that me and you are freedom minded, liberty minded people, and our message is always one that's going to be more of a positive message at the end of the day, even if there's maybe some scrapes that it takes to get there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, we got to keep chugging away. And the only way that we keep chugging away at this is if we continue to open those doors for hip hop artists to just see that uh, until the label can find a new way to help us redefine this picture, man, redefine this picture. It's terrible, because that's not what it was for. It was yeah, was it counterculture in some ways? Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe by the definition, but it was never necessarily to just say f this and f that. It was just music. It was just a new way to listen to music, from all of these other things. And music's recycled at the end of the day. And I love what hip hop also does too, with just now when you think about how things have evolved into the digital era. and you look at a lot of the back then when you were thinking about DJ Cool, Herc, and you think about digital now and the sampling, and now they're taking these records and they're putting them into drum machines and they're breaking them down and then they're putting them into songs now. They're like that is so freaking cool to me. I was watching this video of this cat that was on a morning show, and dude, it was less than 5 minutes. He did this thing in 35 seconds.
Yeah.
He just started putting this whole thing together, and he just da 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 da. And then he's like and then you start hearing the kick, and then you start hearing the snare, and then it just starts coming together. And these guys are looking at him in awe, like I'm looking at him in awe. And it's just it's quick now. It's quick now. And they're doing these battles. They're doing these producer battles now too. I love seeing all of that. I love seeing that. And again, that's just they're breaking this apart. They're breaking this apart, and they're showcasing and they're highlighting. These like, okay, here are the samplers. Here are their your drum machine specialists, and then here are your piano specialists. Here are your live recording specialists with percussions or whatever it may be, or live instrumentation. And they're putting highlights on all of these, and I want to see more of that. I think that, again, we're in the right direction. We're in a Renaissance golden era where, again, we're just starting to see more people come alive and starting to look at themselves in the mirror and starting to say, oh, I can do this. I can absolutely do this. And I agree with you. You can. You absolutely can, for sure. And I can't, and I mean, just being a tenured artist, even listening to some of the trap music that we classified as trap music, I can relate to some of that, because I can relate to a feeling of struggle. I can relate to a feeling of wanting this more than I've ever wanted anything else. And coming from those mud thoughts where it just felt like it was mud. It was just always going to be dirty, and I would never be able to clean this off. I would never see this time. And I can resonate with that. I can also separate the difference of the things that I went through and had to do versus the things that they did and what they had to do, and not fuse those realities. And I feel like, we get again the other side of that, where kids aren't thinking like that, and it's the younger generation that are being influenced with this music. Specifically, in this instance, we're talking about hip hop, because again, it's just so it does have a raw emotion to it. And now you've got kids who've never ever been on that side before, not at all, that now think that that's cool, but we want to blame hip hop.
Yeah, it's so this could go into a whole different discussion on parenting, and but I think we've probably hit the limit of where we want to go tonight anyways. So
Ooh, dang! That was a good cliffhanger.
it was a good cliffhanger. That's a whole nother place we could go down into with that thing.
Ooh,
So yeah, I just want, and we're gonna be, if you wanted to follow up on that, we're gonna be in Discord right now. So there's links wherever you're listening to this. There should be links where they will take you to our Discord, where we will have a react time available. So if you have a problem with anything that has been said, or if you agree, we are interested in what you have to say. So definitely come and join us. And with that, Izzy, it has been awesome. This is always great. And episode 22 has been fantastic. I can't wait to see what we're going to talk about next week, man.
I'm excited, man. And thank you for tuning in, y'all.
Absolutely. Hey, never give up the fight.
Never give up the fight.
You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody and stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. Looking for change, looking for pain, pulling a mob, pushing a train. I'll never stop, stick to a lane, pick up the pieces and go rearrange. I'll be the best above all the rest, put me to the test and expect nothing less, you check as I'm chess, what's happening next, yeah.
He got the venom, a tangible weapon, no coming in second. This life is a lesson, he got a new engine from pain, that's a blessing. New focus, no guessing, just bold and obsession, all in his possession. You got their attention, I leave an impression and take a redemption. Just kill, no discretion, your mind is a weapon. 11-11, it's time for progression,
Could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try the chains, you can say no, free me.
So he's been looking for somebody who could save him, instead of searching inside for what they gave him. A strong will, strong mind causes mayhem. We could change the world, change times, rearrange them. Staying on pace, running the race. Life is a chase, I don't want a place, I wanna be first. Work till it hurts, dehydrated thirst till I'm in a hearse. High ambitions in the right mind can take you so far. It's like you lived a few lifetimes. Take off, I'ma break off from the weak minds. They can stay soft, you can change lives, you create thoughts, never waste time. You got one shot, you got one life, better pop off. What do you like? Make a dream job. No 9-5, no mean boss, just my life and free thoughts.
You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try the chains, you can say no, free me.